Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of the iOS Dev podcast. This is your host Jason, and today I have the lovely Bryce Ellis with me.
Hey everyone.
Bryce. All right, Bryce. I got a chance to hear you speak at I believe it was what is the happy hour?
Yeah,
I
iOS
jo-
Dev Happy
yeah,
Hour.
I
Yeah.
joined halfway through, and I was pretty your story was pretty inspirational.
hmm
So I wanted to ask you, how did you start with iOS development?
Yeah. I appreciate you coming in for the talk, by the way. Really happy to be here. And how I got started into iOS Dev was truly the summer of 2017. I just graduated high school and was thinking about what I wanted to do, major in college. And my older brother at the time had switched from biology to computer science. And on his second screen was coding up an app. So, of course, little brother, I thought that was interesting. And what I did was took his MacBook, can't remember with or without his permission, but I found a YouTube video that showed me how to build a to-do list app. And I followed along the tutorial and ran into a couple errors, and it ended up being, I think I was typing in a semicolon when it was an I, but it was something really simple like that. And I showed my brother, you just, this one mistake here. And after I did that, I just plugged in my iPhone and I had my to-do list app, and I kind of fell in love with iOS development since.
Wow. So you were in college at the time?
I was just
Or
going into college.
just going in.
Yeah, just going in. I think at that time I maybe have decided I was gonna do computer science, or like a week later I decided. I can't remember exactly.
And the entire time you were doing the comp side, did you know you were doing iOS specifically?
Not really. I'd actually, I no, I'd never even really considered myself like capable of having an iOS developer job. Like, I've had some really interesting jobs throughout, but the way it started is I used iOS development as a way to just get a job. Really, um, early on when I was doing that, I wasn't out of college. I wanted to be maybe I really wanted to be an iOS developer, but I had
Yeah.
that maybe I'm not capable or imposter
Yeah.
syndrome.
Yeah.
But I've had some interesting jobs. Like what I did was I used iOS development to build an augmented reality version of Tic Tac Toe at a student-led competition. Did that my freshman year. So I finished my first year of college, and then uh, there was a like a student-led showcase. So I built a mobile app for it, and that led me into an augmented reality internship with Johnson and Johnson. So yeah, you heard of John? You familiar
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
J and J?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to build augmented reality. I did an augmented reality proof of concept, uh, and it was kind of like reality capture or reality kit. I think is Apple's AR
Right.
development program right now, but it was a startup company that I'd later go on to work for. They had something like kind of like your drag and drop Unity type of way to build AR
Yeah.
experiences. And because I'd already done a little bit of iOS development and took some other courses on Udemy, I was able to really pick up on it. And yeah, I did like
Were
a
they, were
got a
they
company
using
award.
were they using Swift too to build it out, or what were they using?
No, it was maybe on the back end some Swift, but I think it was helpful that I knew Swift and about
Yeah.
iOS development, but
Yeah.
I didn't have to know how to program to do that job. So even later on, when I went to work for the startup company itself, I always yearned for iOS development because it wasn't, Xcode is what I've spent many more hours on than as compared to learning how to 3D model or AR development. While it was fun and I do enjoy it, I'd always was still eager to learn all about iOS.
Wait, so what do you use for AR development? Is it Unity or?
Yeah, so at this startup company and at J&J, so I was at Johnson and Johnson 2019, and again, like it was just like Johnson and Johnson, and they used the startup company, which is called Scope AR, used their software. And at Scope AR, they built a software that's kind of like Unity. Back
Oh,
in
I see.
2019, it was a Unity plugin.
Hmm.
And when I went back to work full time, they built their own web AR thing. So it was, if you've seen Unity, you know how to use Scope AR's
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh. And so what prompted the shift from AR to diving deep into
Yeah.
iOS?
I I really think that there's a couple reasons. So even before I was at the AR startup company, like I graduated college, I did a traditional 2017 to 2021
Yeah, the 4 year.
college.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, traditional 4 years. And I just started a IT job after. It was like right around the pandemic, so I couldn't go back and do AR because I was, pandemic things. But I was working at a really well established company here in Memphis called International Paper. And around like 8 months, I realized that's like IT customer service. I was like high level stuff. It wasn't just like answering like the lowest level calls. And like we all start somewhere. I'm not like putting any disrespect on that job, but I just wasn't really happy in the job I was at International Paper. Always felt I could do more. And my older brother, again, who got me into programming, was like, start building a project. So I was like, okay, kind of like hesitantly, like I'll get back into iOS development. So I think at that time, I had just reinstated my Apple developer program because you needed it to build for HealthKit on the watch. So I reinstated it, and I wasn't building anything at all. I was just seeing what I could do. Just a storyboard, just like seeing what
Yeah.
what I could do in watch. And then I don't even think I had an MVP yet, but it was like May 2022. Like I'd worked at International Paper for right at a year. That's when the AR startup company called, and at that time I was working on Stamina Bar, and I think being in the startup company as well just really helped me to drive like this is what I want to do. Like I want to get back into iOS development. I want to start my own thing,
So
and
so you
even
left the paper, the what is it called? International Paper, to go to the
inter-
startup.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So I
And it was
thought
an
that
AR startup, right?
yeah, yeah, and it
Uh,
was the AR startup company that I used at my first internship. So I thought
oh,
at the time,
yeah.
yeah, I thought at the time that was like a dream job. And when I got to the AR startup company, there was a lot of things that made it not work out. But one of the factors in terms of iOS development was I still wanted to learn iOS development. I was still in my free time and any free time I had, I was more curious about learning iOS development as um, and the AR software. Just AR is kind of still immature at the time or now. Um, so the things that I was having to learn was how to 3D model, and like if I was going to learn to do that, I should have done it freshman year of college, like not when I'm out and fresh, and it's not something that I was really excited to learn about. So even at the startup company, when I thought like, yes, this is dream job, I actually still was more curious to learn about iOS development.
And they didn't have any mobile applications that they no, or did they have a
Yeah,
mobile
well,
team?
yeah. So it's interesting. So they actually have like the company. It's called Scope AR, and you can look up. They have an app on the App Store, and what it is you're called an augmented reality author. Like authoring is it's still a new term, but an AR author is someone who can take 3D models and animate them, basically. And you use the thing you do to animate 3D models is something similar to iMovie, Adobe Premiere, anything you use to, chop up videos and record. It's
Oh, yeah,
You don't need to know how to code to do that. You just,
yeah.
got some movie editing skills and you can get to learn how to do that. So, like I said, there was like a limit on how good I could get,
Yeah.
but with iOS development, there's just more breadth to learn. So
And from there, then when did you decide to go to iOS development?
yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story. Like uh, towards the end, me and my boss kind of were having some turmoil. So like yeah, um, and it was in a way that I did want to leave, but I didn't at the time. I still wasn't even applying for iOS developer jobs. So
Yeah.
there were times where my boss was like, Bryce, you gotta you know you gotta meet your own deadlines better. Like me and him got along really well, but I was just like burnt out. When I was at International Paper, I'd worked a full year, didn't take a day off, got to the uh, startup company, didn't take a day off, worked holidays, birthdays, which was nothing wrong because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And like when you and do that, like you will make the sacrifices. But looking back, I definitely burnt myself out, and like being the only person of color,
Yeah.
I kind of had a hard time just communicating the needs I needed, and it ended up like I said, me and my boss got along well. We had a lot in common, and I mean the amount I learned there was invaluable because I got to see what it was like to work at an established startup company, and at the end there was just too much pressure on some of the project I was on and got let go. But I really did give it my best effort. So when I look back at it, it's sad that it ended the way and as abruptly as it did. But I think it's just it's part of life. It happens, and I learned a lot from it. So after that, I was basically like thrown in the water. I had to find a job. Like I'd had some money saved up, and I wish I wouldn't have freaked out as much as I did. But when I was let go, I was like, "Holy crap! I don't have a job anymore. Like, what am I gonna do?" So that really led me to. Well, I've been building Stamina Bar for about a year now, and so I was like thinking, okay, maybe I'll apply just to some general IT jobs, and so I don't want to get down that path again. So I early on in that job search, I decided, what, I'm just gonna focus strictly on iOS developer jobs, and I had a lot of backlash because my dad, when I told him I no longer had a job, he was like, "What the heck? What the heck?" And
Yeah.
he was like, "You're building Stamina Bar. You're just wasting your time on that app." And lo and behold, that actually turned out to be what made me competitive and unique because at the job I got, one of the questions that was one of the questions I got is, I don't know if they were about to hire other people, but like they knew they wanted to hire me immediately, which is really good on my end because I was applying to 1,000 jobs, and I kind of heard back from some, had some interviews, but definitely wasn't hearing back right away.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
yeah, and one of the questions they asked me is what kind of makes you different, and I was like, well, everyone's doing iOS development, but like to go and I would say to build a watch app and just do it on your own. Like I think I had a lot of things that I was preparing for, but didn't really know I was preparing for. But I spent a year building a watch app, had to go into a lot of different roadblocks in terms of development, and then even more roadblocks getting it onto the App Store and working properly. So I was just really able to talk about how I'd been into iOS development for a long time, so I did have a lot of knowledge. But for this past year, even before I knew I was going to get let go, been building up a lot of ammunition. So when I did go into an interview like that, I did have a lot of good experience to talk about.
What resources are out there for watch development? Because I never even looked into watch development, to be honest.
That's funny. I was gonna say, and that's one of the challenges I enjoyed about watch development is that there isn't any really um so that brings me into one of the things I want to talk about. Like I know a couple times I saw you challenge like Swift UI versus UI Kit,
Yeah.
and like really recently, Apple Watch, you could do storyboard development, but I can't remember exactly when, but when I started watchOS development, I was using storyboard, and that's what I was familiar with. And then one day, storyboard was deprecated from watchOS, so um, I had to, kind of learn quickly on like what to do. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to learn Swift UI. That's totally native to me, and totally not native, whatever. But yeah, but in terms of watchOS development, what I found was just GitHub. I had to find other projects on GitHub where people were doing things and reverse engineer myself there. But a lot of the courses that are, watchOS development, they'll teach you how to drag and drop stuff on the storyboard, but now it's deprecated. And I don't think even after I started, like there were many YouTube tutorials or Udemy videos I followed that helped me with watchOS development. When ChatGPT came into play, that definitely helped because it was just a better way to ask questions. But when I first started building Stamina Bar, ChatGPT wasn't a thing. So yeah, that was the interesting about watchOS development. Was there's not too many watchOS developers or resources about it out there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I never really thought about them.
And on that topic, like what I did was when I was saying like back in a year ago, I was like getting back into watchOS or just iOS development. I'd actually bought Angela Yu's most recent course, thinking I could get, something. And what I learned is when I decided, okay, I know I'm going to build an app, and then, okay, now I decided I'm going to build an Apple Watch app. I realized that the course wasn't really relevant to me in terms of how to program and such, because I learned to do iOS development early on, so I knew all the basics, I'd say. But what I found really impactful in Angela Yu's YouTube or Udemy course was the advice she gives at the end of each modules, like how to stay consistent and things like. I actually picked up more on that in terms of my development journey, how to stay consistent, how to, self find your own, like do that. And
that's key for becoming an iOS developer. Like, especially self-taught, like just learning on your own.
yeah, yeah, I think she does really good to give those minute nuggets at the end of each like module, and I really found impactful. She talked like instead of just doing the follow along code with me, I'd in that masterclass course, I'd actually paid more attention to how to market your app, how to do like color theory and such like that, and what I realized is even like one of the things was when I launched Stamina Bar for the first time, I'd went out to my friends and family, made some Facebook posts and said, "Hey, just built an Apple Watch app, please rate it," and such. So even when I was going into interviews, like that was like a metric I was thinking about. I was like, and even when I look at apps today, like it surprises me how sometimes large companies will have, a great app, but has like 8 ratings, and I'm like,
Dang.
like why? But I really did try to do all the basics, like, and I guess it's like the basics of the advanced things. So I was really trying to be intentional about making it look pretty on App Store, making sure the website was professional and such.
All right. And back to the iOS journey. What would you say was the biggest struggle?
Yeah, I would say that I'd say a couple things that come to mind. When I was watching, kind of like doing some research on you, I noticed one of the things that you understand is like distractions are so common. Like it's really easy, friends, social media, anything like that. So for me, especially being in college, I think distractions was one of the kind of core things that come into it. And then I also had some unrealistic goals. Like if I could just go back and tell myself like, hey, if you don't have to put anything amazing on the App Store. You don't even have to necessarily put something on the App Store, but if you're consistent with your learning and still stay curious about it and build something that you enjoy, that's better. Because when I first got into iOS development, I'd done some cool things, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna put an app on the App Store. Like that's my goal at the end of the year. And I, just had some nothing like some half baked ideas, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Like what I actually wanted to do was um, I was into student orientation, like new student orientation. So I wanted to go around and ask people that I knew were doing really well in college, like what advice you would have for a freshman, anything like that and such. So I was walking around University of Memphis with a microphone trying to get as many people as possible. And then what I was going to do is just compile all those videos into an app. So, freshmen in college could come through and say, oh, I want to, need some motivation. Let me go to this app. And I somewhat built that out. And when I submitted it to the App Store, I mean, I didn't even have a professional. Like, I literally used like a picture of like myself, like doing like running or something, because that's kind of what it connected to. So I see why it was rejected, but at the time I quite didn't. I was like, okay, it needs a picture, right? Okay. Um, so I think after like just building that and them saying, "Oh, you don't have enough functionality, might as well just be a website." I think that
Oh, they said
discouraged.
that?
I mean, it wasn't exactly like that, but it was like consider using a website. It was definitely something along the lines like that.
Yeah.
Like, are you sure? Like, I think Apple it was a bit more strict back, maybe, but because why I say that is like when I released Stamina Bar for the first time, there was actually like a major bug that I didn't expect. So I was like, okay, I can see why Apple reject, but I bet if I would put the same app today, they may be like, okay, it looks good, maybe not. But yeah, in their rejection, why it was rejected, it was definitely like not enough functionality. This I can't remember exactly the wording, but it was like it should just be a website. But anyway, that kind of just a little bit discouraged me a bit. Had really high goals, and then and I was doing well in other things. Like I was kind of getting into the startup, like doing AR development, like the
Yeah.
internship went really well. And then I also think pandemic happened too. Like
Yeah,
I,
that was
yeah, and and for me, it wasn't that I necessarily just like fell out and like just didn't do anything. But in terms of iOS development specifically, I wasn't all day through the pandemic doing iOS development stuff. But it is a time that actually built the research I needed for getting back into iOS development, because I got into doing ultra running. That's the year I think I did my first ultra. It was 2020 pandemic. I was doing my traditional races like 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then pandemic hits, and I get a bicycle, and I mean, literally from end to end of Memphis, I rode 100 miles in a day, and so that was just like really good data that I was capturing. And later on that year, I was actually gonna run a marathon on a track, like
yeah.
100, 100 laps. Like it was nuts, but it's just it was safe. Like
Yeah.
yeah, because
Is it 100 laps, 26 miles?
I think it's about like that. It's
Oh, wow.
yeah, right at yeah, and yeah.
Wait,
So
well,
yeah.
I was to say, because I wanted to talk to you about ultra running, but I want to ask you one more iOS question before.
Sure.
What advice would you have for somebody who wants to become an iOS developer right now? Who's maybe they might be studying, maybe they know like the basics, but they're not there yet where they have a role.
Yeah. It's tough. I would say if if you're like completely new to iOS development, you have to get on like an Angela use course that just walks you through Xcode, so you have some something to be familiar with, like just someone to walk you around and you know that. But if you've completed one or two iOS development courses, I'd say it's vital to start your own project. And it really doesn't have to be anything, but just something that you care about. And then that will lead you the rest. Like make a project and at like I was saying, when I was building Stamina Bar for the first time, I didn't necessarily know that I was building Stamina Bar, but I made a commitment to build a watch app, and I knew it was going to be some type of health fitness app because I'd been interested in running. So like find something that's within your interest, and it can literally just start dragging elements to see what you can do, and then I think it's really vital to yeah. And on that note, I was saying just try and find something that you actually have an interest in. You don't have to know exactly what you're building, but and why it's good to build an app on something you're interested in is because you're the expert in it. Like you may know a lot about, for me, it was just health data. So I used that and I wanted to find a way to help people understand their health data easier. And so that led into building Stamina Bar. But yeah, just find something that you're interested in and good at, and then try to build an app around it. And again, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't. It really doesn't.
That's
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. Just something that you can build and then put to GitHub and just say, hey, like I'm posting every day. I'm putting in the work. So I think that, and then just getting into networking groups, like listening, getting inspired. You don't have to like set such goals like I'm going to be a speaker or I'm going to put an app on the app store. Just like take it like a day at a time, and then but challenge yourself each day, because again, for me, when I was setting these goals that were just a bit too realistic for myself, I was like, okay, I didn't reach it, and then kind of fizzled out. But if you're doing something you enjoy and you take it step by step, it's much easier to reach the goals.
And what are your future plans for Stamina Bar?
Yeah, it's probably something I want to do long term. Like when I was originally building it, it was just for fun, maybe even as a means to an end, just to land a job. But it is something that I'm gonna like to the side of my job, just work on and continue to market. I mean, ideally, it would. I tell myself that Apple, not the sky's the limit. Apple's the limit. Like, it would be really nice to see Apple adopt it, because just with their workout app, like, I think it has a lot of good things for technical people, like runners, technical people, but I feel like for everyday Apple Watch users, it doesn't give people what they really need, or it's just a lot of data that's like, I don't really quite understand this, or I don't care to know about what a zone 2, 3, or whatever
Cardio,
it
yeah.
is. Yeah. But something that, everyone for an Apple who more or less wears an Apple Watch uses it for messages or to somewhat keep an eye on their health. And
Yeah.
there's just so much information that the Apple Watch gives, but it can be hard to decipher all that. So again, if I can continue to build Stamina Bar that makes it as easy as possible to understand all that complex health data, like I say, Apple's the limit. I'd really like to just continue to grow it, continue to market it, learn new and that's what I'll use to keep myself sharp. Like in the job market, in terms of iOS development at my job, I'll use Stamina Bar to make sure that I'm on top of trends and just staying sharp on being a good iOS developer. And if it comes and I think another thing that helped in my job is that I took the development of Stamina Bar very professionally. Like I made myself a Trello board so I know what I've worked on, everything in the product backlog. So I'll just continue to keep it professional and try to start something I've been looking to is like, getting all my stuff copyrighted for it and such. But, I'll take it in a very professional manner. And if it works out where it grows as big as it can grow, then that's great. And if it was a means to an end to help me stay a sharp iOS developer and get, my first job or jobs, then, that's okay too.
Yeah. All right. And now I wanted to shift into ultra running.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you start with running ultra marathon?
Man, I'm gonna sound like a broken record saying this, but my older brother was on a epic weight loss journey. So imagine years 2017 for him, and I'd just gotten into college, but me and him were always really close. But this is his story for a second. So he's losing 80 plus pounds, and he does this series where you go from a 5K to half marathon, and he does it like against all odds. You would say he does a 5K in like January, then the 10K the next month, all the way up to the half marathon, which is 13.1 miles. And after that, at the end of the year, talk about setting unrealistic goals, like I was saying. He was like, I want to run a marathon, but he realized, okay, maybe that's not as realistic. So and it was great for him. He did his half marathon, but that next year he was like, who would do that marathon? Bryce. So he invited me. I grew up playing soccer, so I had like a little bit of athleticism, but I'd never run in a organized 5K, let alone ultra. Yeah. So the year now is 2018, January of 2018. I just finished, I'm in my sophomore year of college, and me and my brother, really as a way just to connect with each other more, just start training for a 5K. Wasn't much to do at that time, but I did a 5K and placed well in my age group. And then the 10K I placed, 15K, 9 miles I placed. And then half marathon, that was where I was really in uncharted territory. I had never ran that far, never thought about training for it, but I'd actually done really well for myself because I'd hit it in 2 hours. I remember so vividly, which like a 2 hour half marathon, it's not like elite, like you're just like, but it's fast. It's like maybe like 9 minutes a mile. Yeah, it's really, really good. But I remember seeing the finish line maybe 100 yards away, and at the time I didn't know 2 hours, like whatever, but I just saw it was so close, so I just hauled through the finish line and sprinted through the finish line. And so after that, my first half marathon, I was like, never doing that again. I couldn't walk down the stairs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want any more of it. And so, but little did I know, that's the year my brother was always planning to run a marathon. I didn't know that was his end game. So during the summer, fast forward, 3 months after the half marathon, he sends me a message. It's like, hey, we're doing the St. Jude Memphis Marathon. And I'm like, all right, I guess so. And that's also the time I was at my first internship with Johnson & Johnson. I was in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I got a personal trainer. They kind of had a deal hookup with us there at one of the gyms. So I got a trainer and told him that I just want to look good and I want to train for a marathon. that was my goal. So they kind of helped me do some exercises that would help me as a runner. I got into yoga, kind of underrated, but just yoga was really helpful for me. And come December 2019, just literally the same year I started running. So January I ran my first 5K, and then December I was lining up for my first marathon. And I finished it well. I did it in 4 hours, 15 minutes. I didn't know what to expect out of it, but around midway, I just stuck with the pacing group that I was just assigned to, and around halfway, the guy was being too motivational. Jason, he was he was he was like, yeah, I was like overweight at one time, and my doctor told me that if I don't lose weight, I'm not gonna be here too much longer. But look at me now. This is my 15th marathon or whatever he was running, and at that time I was like, oh, this is too easy. Like, and we were going at a good steady pace. And the pace group was actually 4 minutes 5 seconds, and I finished 10 minutes behind them. So I'm still right on. But when I heard him, I was just like, okay, I'm taking off. Like, I kind of went David Goggins mode and just started running, man. And so I'd say from like mile 13 to 20, I was running way too fast. I was just running, and then mile 20 hit the wall.
Oh, you hit a wall?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Started cramping, and then someone behind me noticed. He was like, "Hey man, I had Olive Garden last night. I feel you." He was like, "Let's walk
He had
run."
Olive Garden? Why would you have Olive Garden the night before a marathon?
I have no idea. We all make those mistakes. So yeah, me and him, we'd probably finish like mile 20 to 25, and then he was good. I was still hurting, but he like went on that last mile, and then I eventually made it across the finish line. Pretty good fashion. I finished it strong. I wasn't. I wish I had some of the videos to show you, but like anytime I've ran through a finish line, it's more or less looked aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so after I got, so that's first marathon, and then next year is when pandemic happened, so the race was virtual. That's when I was gonna decide to do 100 miles on, not 100 miles,
100 miles,
a marathon. Apologies, not yet. They have a cool story coming up though, but yeah, I did the 100 miles on a bike that year, and when it was all virtual, I said, well, since there's no organized course, it'd be safe to do it on a track, can have food all there, just one-stop shop, don't have to go anywhere. And I'm telling you, I got him 13 miles in, and there's an app you have to record it on. I took a break to check I posted on my stories and stuff while I'm running a marathon on a track, follow along with me. And I accidentally swipe off the app that's recording my run. So I'm 13, 14 miles in, and I just lose all my progress. So I was devastated. I was like, I'm not going to finish it. So I kind of just let it go that day. But a couple days, it wasn't even a week later. It was maybe like 2 or 3 days or so later. I was like, I can't just go out like that. So I saw a couple of my friends had done a 50K, which is 31 miles, which is kind of anything more than a marathon, I guess, is considered an ultra. But
yeah,
when you think about races, it goes marathon 26.2 miles. Then first ultra marathon would be 50 kilometers or 31 miles. So I just set out to do that. I was like, today's the day I'm going to wake up. I did 6 miles, took a short break, went out and did like 20 miles, and then took a little short break, and then finished up the last couple miles around the neighborhood. So I was like, yes, I'm an ultra runner now. And the next ultra that I got into was 2020. And then I did my first 50 miler in October of 2021. So at around that time, fast forward a little bit, I was kind of starting to get into like Python. I was getting into Python and data visualizations, and I was actually using my and it was really the foundation of Stamina Bar. Was I took all my running data from my Apple Watch, put it in an Excel sheet, used Python to make charts and such with it, and I was using that to like try and train smarter. And I I was training for a marathon. Like at this time, I was like, I'm gonna try and run a marathon in 3 hours, which, you know, really unrealistic. Like it's possible, but
some people do it though. Some people do
yeah,
like a marathon in like 2 hours and something, which is crazy.
yeah, that's elite level.
Yeah.
Like it's not like your recreational everyday runner. Like that's a sub 3 hour marathon is it's achievable like with years of training, but definitely elite level. But that's the goal I had out at the beginning of the year. I was like, I want to try and run sub. I've already, you know, that's just the goal I had, and I was just following some generic online training plans, and you know, things happen with those type of really static plans. You get sick, yeah, you know, whatever. So I was in that like time. I was like feeling like I could run a marathon anytime. Like I kind of realized close to the race that I wasn't going to run a marathon in sub 3 hours. Like definitely could improve my time, but to literally sprint the whole marathon just wasn't something that I even wanted to necessarily train for, because that like you literally have to sacrifice everything to do that. Like you really do have to be like just really strict, and it's something I'm interested in, but at the time I just wasn't willing to sacrifice everything I needed to devote my life more or less to, you know, training for that.
What's required? I'm guessing you have to like maintain your weight like lower. I get right. You have to keep your weight lower.
Yeah,
Like to keep
yeah. I mean, you'd probably, and it just depends. Like, because there's dudes who are buff and 220 pounds that can do it, but I think it's just more like, you know, can't cheat on a diet. Like, I'd say, and that's something that I wanted to do. Like, I enjoy eating healthy. I do. But I didn't want to like never not go out, have a drink, or, you know, have whatever I wanted to eat. But I was still training. Like I was at that time, of course, best shape in my life, because I did go on to run a 50-mile race. But what I learned in extracting all my data was, well, you know what? I may not be able to run that marathon in 3 hours, but I did see a race 6 days in advance. Like, so I wasn't prepared, quote unquote, for the 50-mile, but I was just kind of complacent. I was like, I can get up and do a marathon any day. And I was like, I really need something if I am going to run a sub 3 hour marathon, like I need to do something drastic. So I saw that 50-mile race 6 days in advance, and I was just like looking at all the past participants, and I'm like, no one, I knew I'd be the youngest person to ever do it. So that was a lot of intrinsic motivation. And I knew I was probably the only person of color to do it too, because like just not too many you know, folks out there that are doing those type of races. So that was also a lot of intrinsic motivation that I wanted to be the first one. So like I said, I saw a 50-mile race 6 days in advance, and I was like, I'm gonna do it or die trying. Basically, because I was like prepared, like, because like I said, I was in really good shape, and I was like, it's just really the mental thing. Like I ran 31 miles in a day, so I was like, well, let's see if I can. That's like the next progression too. And I just remembered like that week I was in monk mode. Like no distractions, nothing. Like just like completely focused, and like I was just manifesting how that race would go, because that was definitely like the biggest, I'd say, other than like getting let go and like being in that unknown and like having to find an iOS developer job, that time before a race that where you are really in an unknown, that was definitely one of the like just, I'd say, even like most present moments I've been with myself, because I was really going into something that I was like, something that I couldn't even dare to like think I could do. But I was on a mission. Yeah. And I got up, and I really didn't even want to tell anybody. Like I waited to tell my family like only 3 days before the race, because I was like, I didn't want anyone talking me out of it. My parents thought I was crazy, but my brother was like, "Go for it." He totally believed in me. So yeah, I'd end up running the race, and I took my time. Like what it was a course that you did 8 times. It was 6 miles that you did 6.2 miles that you did 8 times. So in total, I think the course was 52 miles, but around it was like that. So like first laps, I was going pretty fast, like maybe even a little too fast. But I was going fast, and I say fast, but because it took me 11 and a half hours to do that 50 miles, which is like 12 or 13-minute mile per pace. But when you think of like stopping and all that, that's like moving for 12-minute pace for 12 hours, basically, is what I was doing. But my brother came and ran a couple of the laps with me, and he was like, "You gotta slow down. You're gonna get yourself hurt out there." So on that 7th lap, he actually was like, "Just walk it. Literally, you walk the whole 6 miles." And I did. Like I'd had the time built up where it took me 2 hours to do the 6 miles of it, but I walked that entire lap, and the race director, he kind of saw me walking that lap, and I still had another 2 to 3 hours before the cutoff of the race. And he looked at me. He was like, "You're gonna finish this," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'm gonna finish this." So I, took my last break, and I, went and did that last loop, and it was just such joy because my parents had came out and they saw like the latter half of the race, and it was like really emotional to like see them and just do something that I, dared to do, and they had their doubts, but on that last lap, I can't remember exactly what my dad and mom said, but it was more or less along the lines like, "Give them hell, just like go out there and do the best you can." So I remember getting close to the finish line. I text them, said, "I'm rounding the corner. I'll be there soon." And again, saw the finish line, and I was like, I cannot believe I just did 50 miles. So I'd ran through the finish line, went up, gave the finish start line a high five, and that was my first 50 mile in the books. It was definitely a surreal moment.
That's crazy. What do you do for nutrition? Like on.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not like too strict, but just to kind of break up like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. For breakfast, what I like, I don't drink too much coffee, but in terms of like what I drink for breakfast, it's usually water, orange juice.
Is this like? Oh, I meant like during the race.
Oh, yeah, I was like
Yeah.
daily nutrition,
Yeah,
but yeah, during the race, I was eating a lot of they have like, have you ever heard of those like runner gels? It's like gels.
Not the gels. I get what's in it.
It's like, it's almost like goo. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's not quite like, it's kind of like squeezable applesauce. It's not like squeezable applesauce, of course, but like the thing that you would just like, a little packet you'd rip off, and then something easily digestible. I don't even know. You have to look up like a gel for running, but just little things like that.
Is that it?
You see it?
Yeah.
You sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I looked it up. I'll put a picture of it on the screen.
Yeah, but those little goo gels and like some Cliff Bars. I think I made some peanut butter jelly sandwiches in advance. So yeah, I did just kind of like some basics, the stuff that I knew I enjoyed and could go down relatively easy. But I was eating a lot. Like I think I heard from a friend you need to eat like 100 calories every mile or every hour or so. So I was during the race. I didn't really have to like use the bathroom really bad or throw up, mainly because I was like just taking my time. But I just I didn't eat any junk. Like I have done races where I ate donuts or Snickers, and that that doesn't. And I've also done some really fun races. Like that just brings it up. Like there's a race here in Memphis where you honestly just can get drunk and run 4 miles around one of the cool neighborhoods. So I definitely ran a race like really drunk. That was definitely super fun. But in terms of this 50 miler, I was like just eating little peanut butter jelly sandwiches and like those like running foods.
Wait, how many did you have your Apple Watch on during the race?
For some, I think at the time I had like I had like the Apple Watch 3, so it died, and there was times where I was wearing my brother's watch. But why do you ask?
Oh, because I was curious, how much calories did it say you burned that day?
Oh man, I bet I could go back on the phone and maybe look, but I mean, I don't know. I wish I would have known. Probably a lot. Probably 10,000. A lot.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a post-dinner thing? Or
yeah, I ate sushi. Yep, I went and ate sushi. Big fan of sushi. I didn't eat and I mean before the race, I'd gained 10 pounds in preparation. I think I'd gained like 7 to 10 pounds. I was like, I knew it was gonna be a lot, so I was eating a lot of pasta. So I like really prepared well for it. And have you ever heard of liquid IV or like hydration IV? Yeah, so I went to a little health clinic and did that. So I was like normally like at that time I think I was at most I was weighing 170, but before that race I was 177, 180. So I was definitely like fueled for the race. And then afterwards like probably had 2 rolls of sushi, but I couldn't eat a whole bunch because I was like my stomach was just trying to process everything that it went through. But I did.
Yeah, your whole body probably is like, what the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because I would say after that first half marathon I did, I was probably in worse condition because after that 50 miler, like I'd went up and high fived. I need to send you the video, but I'd high fived the finish line, and then I was I drove myself home too. So that was yeah. So it wasn't like an hour. It was like 20-minute drive, but I was still able to.
That's so impressive because that means that your feet were still working.
Yeah. So I was able to walk around, and then I remember going into work like that Monday. They're like, what did everyone do this weekend? I was like, well, I have a freaking story to tell. I didn't tell anybody beforehand because, like I said, I didn't want anyone to discourage me out of it.
So is 50 miler your top so far?
Yeah, 50 miler is the top. I had done the race again. So I did it the first time, October 2021, which was way more magical because I was like, I didn't know I could do it, all of that. And then I did it again that following May, so like May 2022. And again, I finished a little better, but like I said, I kind of knew I was going to do it again, and the course was a little bit easier. And I kind of thought about doing 100 milers, but actually what was going to be my progression from the 50 miler was to do a triathlon. So I'd already can run, could bike, and so I started getting into a pool. I'm not the best swimmer at all. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do like a sprint triathlon, like one of the shortest distances you can do. And I was really not as prepared as I probably could have or should have been. There was a time where I found a triathlon coach and took a swim lesson. But when I got out to the race, I wasn't like all that enthused about it. I was like kind of daunted about it. And, when I was running, like I could get out there and enjoy myself, run, lollygag and such. But like in the water, I was like, I don't have that comfortability to just like super water comfortable.
Yeah.
So I got out there and I actually did not finish. Like I literally could have died that day. I was prepared though. I had everything, had my tri-suit, and it was like, well, I thought to myself, if I could do 50 miles, I could, get through a triathlon. But when the race started, I was already a little nervous, maybe a little underprepared. But I'm talking, you run into a lake, one of the most famous lakes here in Memphis. You know, you waddle yourself in the lake and then you just start swimming. And I'd never done that. Like when I'd practiced, I was just in an indoor pool. So I didn't have any experience like going out into a race like that. And then maybe a minute in, I'd like pulled a muscle really bad in my shoulder. And I think it was just probably my shoulder not being strong enough. But you can imagine coming down on some water and it's just like, nope. And I pulled a muscle like extra, like so bad that I couldn't like lift my arm to put deodorant on. Like I was like, oh, like in pain to like lift my arm up to do that type of stuff. But luckily, I think one of the spotters, like a kayak, kind of caught me that I was struggling, and I was able to hang on and get myself to shore. But I was in like deep water with like one arm, just like in an extreme amount of pain. And I was like, kind of like let it rest for a second and see if I could go again. And I was like, I'll try it again, see if it's any better. And then I was just like, I cannot, physically could not. And then it was actually kind of like a sad time for me because I think I'd like kind of been so high on, you know, running the marathons and such. And afterwards, like trying to find the next challenge and then to fail like that, it was a bit discouraging, but it kind of led me to realize like you can do like extreme stuff, but you don't have to go and, you know, hear David Goggins or me talk about running a marathon and then go run a marathon yourself. Like, you know, walking and, you know, doing your local 5K is totally awesome. And like for me, I still want to do marathons and such ones in the future, but like I'm not gonna necessarily beat myself up or be so upset that if I don't do 100 milers, because, you know, just being healthy in general is better for my well-being than to like, so I've kind of like, I still would like to redeem myself on the triathlon and still would like to do 100 milers and, you know, qualify for Boston one day, but I'm not gonna, you know, live my life so extreme that it risk injury or other things. Like nowadays I just enjoy going for, you know, a run, walk. Been getting back into soccer. I play a lot of indoor soccer nowadays, so it's good to get back into that.
Yeah, for me, I do a little bit of running, but no ultra marathon running. I've been I do every now and then like 8 to 10 miles runs. And I've done a half marathon before, and I'm tempted to shoot for a marathon. But it's just something I haven't done yet.
Right. What was your halftime?
My halftime.
You remember?
It was about 4. Wait, I have a picture. Because I didn't run a race. I just did it like myself. Yeah. I just because there's a trail where I live, and I just ran it 6. No, wait, what is it? Yeah, six. Whatever half a marathon is. Yeah. And I ran back.
Yeah.
But it took me, I want to say like 3 to 4 hours. 3 to 4 hours, I want to say. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. If you see a marathon, let's go. I see you're in Atlanta. That's something I do enjoy in Memphis, but it's something I've been kind of thinking about. It's just like stepping out of my shell, because I'm from a small town, so like coming from small town to Memphis was a nice change, but kind of conflicted. I'll tell you what, like, because it's a really good. Memphis is a great city, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to, you know, stay in the same spot for too long.
Yeah. Yeah, is your job remote or?
Yeah. Oh. Everyone's based out of Austin or Dallas, but yeah, I'm fully remote, and I know my teammates are, you know, kind of all over the states.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Gives you some flexibility.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate having you. If you want to shout out any socials where people can find you.
Yeah, sure. Again, pleasure speaking to you, Jason. I was super excited. Glad we got to talk today. But for all those that want to catch up with me, my Twitter is at Bryce Ellis, Bryce_Ellis99, and check out Stamina Bar. It's staminabar.app is my website, or you can search Stamina Bar on your iPhone or Apple Watch to download it.
The links will be in the description, so definitely check them out. And if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions. See you guys.
See ya.
I'm riding between it all in this perfect play. I'm a piece of the puzzle, I'm a fit where you need me.